Hey, welcome back to another very exciting video at the PhotoshopTrainingChannel.com. My name is Jesus Ramirez. You can find me on Twitter at JRFromPTC. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the presentation that I gave at the Adobe headquarters in San Jose, California. This presentation was for the Creative Cloud user group of San Jose, which is run by my friend Sally Cox. In this presentation, I talked about compositing and the different guidelines that you should follow when taking images from multiple sources and compositing them together. I had an amazing time talking for Sally's group, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Sally for allowing me to speak for her group. I also want to thank everybody who was there live and for everybody who was watching at home. We had about 75 people at Adobe, and we had roughly 200 watching online. So I just wanted to thank everyone for their support. I also would like to ask you that if you enjoy this presentation, not only to hit the like button as you usually do or share it with a friend, but also take the time to go into Sally's website, creativecloudsanjose.com. And that's going to take you to a meetup page where you can sign up for her meetups. That way you get a notification every time there is a new guest speaker. It's okay if you don't live near San Jose. You can always watch online. And essentially the video online would be just like what you're about to watch now. You can also follow Sally on Twitter at Creatable. But anyway, I really hope you enjoy this presentation. If you want to follow along with the presentation, I have the files available for download at my website, PhotoshopTrainingChannel.com. If you're there now, just look somewhere below this video and you should see the link to download the files. If you have any comments or questions, as always, feel free to leave them down below. Okay, so let's get started with the presentation.
And I want to thank you guys for coming out. I know the weather's not that nice, and some of you must have driven from pretty far to be here. Who here came from the furthest location? Who lives pretty far from here? Ooh, Martinez. Wow. Anybody live further than that? No? Oh, he gets a present. There we go. So if you answer questions, we're going to hand out presents. Thank you for coming out. And thank you everybody for coming out. So my presentation today is going to be about compositing. In case you don't know, compositing is creating an image out of multiple sources. That's a composition. And I'm going to go to several different rules. And I hate using that word rules because I think that this is art. And in art, you don't really have rules. You can bend them. So everything I talk about today can be altered or changed a little bit just to make it work for you. But I want you to keep these items in mind so you can come up with the most realistic composition that you can. So I'm just going to go ahead and open a file and get started. So I'm going to start this demo talking about perspective. I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to creating compositions, because a lot of people don't think about how perspective affects the final image. A lot of people think of compositions as collages where they just cut and paste a whole bunch of images into Photoshop, and then sometimes you get images where there's a person standing but he kind of looks like he's floating or he's too flat and things don't look right. So the purpose of this first file that we're going to work with is to sort of explain how composition works, and then we're going to use Photoshop to create a composition. So one of the first things you have to think about when you're creating a composition is you have to find the horizon line of your image. And the horizon line simply means the line in the image where the sky meets the ground plane. And usually you can find that by looking at parallel lines on your objects that have straight edges, such as buildings, boxes, things of that sort. And if you draw lines along the parallel lines, you'll see where the horizon line and where the vanishing points is. In this sample here, we're talking about a one-point perspective. As you can see with these green lines, if we draw lines along the edges of the boxes, we get into the vanishing point. Once you have the vanishing point set up, you can determine where the horizon line is. So you can imagine this being the sky up here, and here at the bottom we have the ground. Now that we have that, we can bring in another image and place it in the proper perspective. And what that means is that you have to align the horizon lines of those images so the box on the left doesn't look like it's floating or it looks out of place. In this particular box, if I were to draw those lines, you'll see that the perspective is off. which is why that box looks sort of weird floating off to the side. If I were to bring that box down onto the horizon line, so it has the same horizon line, and by the way, it's okay that it does not have the same vanishing point. You can have multiple vanishing points on the same horizon line. However, once that box is there, it's now in perspective. If I remove those lines, you can see that it's in perspective. I can also transform this object, and in Photoshop, when you press Command-T, Control-T on the Mac, you get the transform handles, and then this little pivot point here in the middle, this little crosshair. You can move that over onto the horizon line, and you can hold Option or Alt on the PC, and you can scale from the vanishing point. That way you keep your object in perspective as you're transforming. Just quickly to show you, there's a 2-point perspective, and it's essentially the same thing, same idea. You have to find the vanishing points and the horizon line, and wherever the two vanishing points meet, that's where your horizon line is. And there's 3-point perspective. You can imagine being on top of a really tall building, taking a photograph at a building that is shorter, and you'll see that there's actually 3 vanishing points, and the 2 vanishing points on top, if you draw a line straight through, that would be your horizon line. And this is what you will use to composite your image. Now, one other thing you have to keep in mind is where the center of the image is. And the center of the image is really easy to find. I mean, it's right in the middle of your composition. You can actually create a guide if you wanted to. So if you go into View, New Guide, you can just type 50%, and it'll create a guide. Oops, I'm sorry. It should have been on the horizontal axis, it was not the vertical. But and sorry, this I'm working with this mouse. It's not responsive right now, and I'm going to use the Wacom tablet in just a second, Ed, so don't worry about that. So you click on horizontal, and then you type in 50%, and it creates a line right in the center of the image. And that's important because sometimes you might get an image that you really can't tell where the vanishing point is. You might be shooting a portrait of somebody, and there's a white background. There's no real lines to tell you what it is, but a lot of times you can tell if the camera was pointing up or pointing down, and that's going to help you when you start your composition. So in this case, the horizon line is on top of the center of the image, so that means that the camera was looking down when the picture was taken. If we transform this vertically, now the horizon line is at the bottom. So the photograph would have been taken with the camera pointing up. You can imagine this being a tall building, and you're looking up at the top of the building, taking a picture of the horizon line being at the bottom. So when you're bringing the images together, you have to have that in mind. So I'm just going to do a quick little project here to show you how these things apply into like an actual photograph. So we know where the center of the image is. We have a guide there, so I can turn this group off. Now, he looks okay. He has shadows, and the lighting is okay, and it looks like he's matching, but in reality, he's not matching. If you really stare at it long enough, you start thinking he's a little too flat. He's leaning forward. He's not in the right perspective, and that's the problem. There's something in your mind that knows it's not right. So what you have to do is find his horizon line. Luckily for us, I've already gone ahead and done that. And it's actually very easy to find if you're working with water, because the horizon line it's always visible. It's right there. You don't have to draw any lines. But his horizon line is right above his knees. Notice in the composition that he's in, the horizon line is way up here. So if we wanted to put him in this composition and have him in perspective and have him fit and match, we need to move him up. So if we move him up, he's going to be outside of the picture. So you can't do that. Now we can do something else though. We can bring him back down, and maybe we can move the background back down. So in this case, we're going to move the beach down, and his horizon line was right above his knees. And by the way, the horizon lines don't need to match exactly. You can cheat a little bit. So as long as you're within that range, the images are going to work. Unless you have something that's very, very specific, like railroad tracks or something like that have a converging point, then you might need to be a little more exact. But with something like this, as long as you're within a certain range, you're going to be okay. So now he's in perspective, but the problem is that we don't have the sky back there. So you can cheat. You can create a sky. In this case, I'm going to just create it out of a gradient, and I'm just going to choose these colors here to create my sky. And this is set to opacity set to 0, which is why it's not showing back here. So I'm just going to set it to 100%, and that's going to be our new sky. Press OK, and I'm going to drag this under the other layer, and I still got to fix it a little bit. It's not 100% right, so just move that up. So something like that. And of course, I can go in here and mask this part of the sky out, but I don't think I need to do that. This is just a demo, and you guys get the idea. So now he's in perspective. Also, something I talked about earlier is if you wanted to transform him, you can press Control-T, click on the pivot point, which is here, and put it anywhere along the horizon line. It doesn't really matter where. And you can scale him in and out if you hold Option on the Mac and Alt on the PC, click on one of the corner handles. Now I can scale him in perspective. So no matter where, or doesn't matter how I scale him, he will always be in perspective. And I can move him left and right, and he will be in perspective. If I didn't do this and I just simply, try to eyeball it and place him somewhere, he might not, he's just not going to look right. He's going to look like he's floating. So that's one of the things you have to keep in mind. I have another little mini project here for you guys with perspective. And if I have this building here, or these buildings, this shot of a city, and this scroll running, where am I going to place her so she's in perspective and she looks like she belongs? If I remove the background, and by the way, I have a mask here, and all I'm doing is holding Shift and clicking on the layer mask to enable it and disable it. Where do I place her so she fits in here? And if you notice, I mean, you can just look at the image. The horizon line is not going to be in the photograph because the picture was taking up, looking up on top of the building. So that means that the horizon line is somewhere way down here. And you may need to figure out where that is. Now, I don't know exactly where it is. I'm going to press Command-R to bring up the rulers. And I'm just going to guess that the horizon line is somewhere down here. And if I really wanted to find out where it was, I can come up with the pen tool, click on one of the lines here. Oh, and by the way, oh man, it's so tiny in this screen that I can barely see it. But I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Can you see that line? All right, cool. Because I can't see it, but when you click and you drag, you create a line, and if you follow that line, you can figure out where the horizon line is. So I'm just going to create that line there. I'll press Escape and then just do the other side. And man, I'm really having a hard time looking at the line with this screen here. Sorry. But anyway, I can start creating those lines and then figure out where the lines meet, and that's where my vanishing point will be. And then if I draw a straight line across, then that's where my horizon will be. So we'll just say it's in this area here, and I'm probably going to be close enough, so that's okay. So then we know that her horizon line is right below her foot because we can see it here. So if we were to composite her into this image, I would drag her down, and her foot would probably be out of the picture, and that's okay. So I'm going to press Command-T, Control-T on the PC to transform, and I can scale her up. And why didn't that work? Oh, I think I was, sorry about that. I think I didn't have let me try that again. Oh, yep, still in the pen tool. Thank you. You know what? I'm just going to grab the arrow tool and just delete those paths because I don't need them. And I think I just deleted that girl. I'll bring her back. There we go. Command-T to transform. Bring the pivot point down to the horizon line. Hold Shift, click, and drag up to wherever I think she should go, and I can move her left and right, and now she's in perspective. So that's one of the things to keep in mind when you're working with photographs. Have the right perspective for the images that you're working with. Before I move on to the next little section, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints? No? Hold on.
So where am I in relation to her now? Because
You as you taking the picture?
yeah,
You're probably leaning down, looking up.
she's huge.
Well, I mean, right. I obviously didn't scale her appropriately. I would take a little more time scaling her. I guess the point that I was trying to make when I was scaling her was that it doesn't matter how big she is. I should scale her from the vanishing point. So no matter how big or small she is, she's always in perspective. Obviously, there's going to be some scaling issues that you have to look at. But yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
You were getting ready to ask another one, weren't you?
Jesus, what's your last name? Would you spell it?
Ramirez, R-A-M-I-R-V-Z. You're welcome.
That was your question? Oh, okay. I could have answered that one.
What type of lenses are you using to photograph her and in the buildings?
Actually, good question. I'm not a photographer. These are all stock photographs. So actually something I should have mentioned when I started that you just reminded me. A lot of the things that I'm showing are mostly for people who are working with the images that they have. Either they have to go online and find them, or they're whatever the client provides. If you're taking the photographs, you can actually work out a lot of these problems before you shoot. So for example, the angle that you're shooting at. So right. So yes, if you are I think almost everybody here is a photographer. So yeah, if you're a photographer, you can think of a lot of the solutions to these problems before you come into Photoshop. If you're in Photoshop and you have these problems, then this is how you would go about solving them. Any other questions? Oh. And Sally, let me know if there's any questions online.
So if the shot of the woman had been shot from above,
Right.
and obviously the background shot from below,
Yes.
can you still bring them into some coherence, or is it just too hard?
It's too hard. I personally wouldn't do it. Sort of like I did earlier with the man here. You may be able to Photoshop something else in, maybe like you move the background down, or you move something around and then composite something else in for the movement that you created. But it's just going to be too difficult. I mean, not every photograph is going to work with every single picture. Yeah.
Any other questions?
How do you deal with perspective when, one image was shot with, say, 100 millimeter lens and it creates the different parallax than the
Right.
20 millimeter lens that you might shoot for the.
You know what? That's a really good question. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know if I'll be able to answer that specific question. A lot of the times, it relates to what the actual image is. And there might be certain distortions that you can make, certain blurs. There's also ways of cheating, for example. Like I talk a lot about cheating because that's really what it is. A lot of times the images just don't match because of problems like that, or perspective, or lighting, or whatever. So you have to incorporate other transformations, filters, or even a lot of times putting another object in front of the area that's just not working. So I mean, it just really depends on the actual images that you're working with.
Okay, any other questions in the room before we move on? Okay, so how about online? Anybody have any questions online?
So there was one question. How do you deal with, and it's disappeared now. Sorry. No, it's just disappeared.
Okay, so everyone online, stop typing for a moment, please, while we find that question. Just bear with me, Jesus.
Shadow, I saw that.
Whoever asked the question about shadow, could you retype it? Anybody who had questions, could you just retype them right now quickly online? Quickly being the operative word there.
How do you deal with shadow differences with perspective?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How do you deal with shadow differences with perspective?
I'm going to talk about that. When I get into the section about shadows, if that person has the same question or a different question or a new question, they can type that in. But I am going to talk about
terrific.
shadows.
So once we cover that, okay, and then how do you deal with shadows with, how do you make trees look realistic?
Again, it depends on the image. I mean, if you're creating trees from scratch, well, there's that new script under filters. But I mean, I don't know if we want to go into that. I mean, it's just
We'll do that in another session.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
and they
thanks
can
everyone.
email me, jr@photoshoptrainingchannel.com, and I can answer any additional questions.
jr@photoshoptrainingchannel.com is his
Yes.
email address. I can hear everyone typing questions to you as we speak. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Cool. So now we're going to move into a different kind of perspective. We're going to talk about atmospheric perspective, and this sort of relates to what I mentioned earlier about a lot of people just use Photoshop as a way to collage things instead of actually compositing things together. And when you're bringing images into Photoshop, you got to think of how that particular image is relating to the background that it's going to reside in. So for example, here we're talking about atmospheric perspective. We have this ball here that is close to us, and there's no real atmosphere between you and the ball. But as you start moving further away, there's going to be water particles and smog and God knows what else, and it makes the balls that are further away a little bit flatter, as you can see. So how can we work with atmospheric perspective in Photoshop? Well, one way we can work with it at least is I'm going to start with this castle here, and I'm just going to transform it and bring it way back here, and I'm going to scale it down. So this castle is going to be way, way, way back there, somewhere about there. And the actual scale is not really important for this demo, so let's not worry about that too much. Now, if I just place that there, you can clearly see that that doesn't look right. It looks like somebody just cut something out and just pasted it there. We got to work with the atmospheric perspective of this particular image. One of the ways you can work with is by create the atmospheric perspective is by using a layer style. If I double click on the layer here, it brings up the layer style panel window, and I can click on color overlay. The color that I'm going to select is whatever color the atmosphere is. In this particular case, I can probably find a nice, bluish color here somewhere, something like that. I'm going to press OK. Right now, the opacity is set at 100%, but I can bring that all the way down to 0 and then just bump it up until it matches the area where the castle is sitting in. At least in my screen, I don't know about the one up there. It's very close, and actually, if I were to zoom in, we can probably get a better match. So something like that might work. I mean, you get the idea. And then we can actually keep doing this and keep duplicating the building. So I'm going to hold Option, that's Alt on the PC, click and drag, place it here, and I'm going to scale that one up. Again, I'm not too worried about the actual perspective or scale, so maybe a little bit bigger or smaller, but I'm going to double click on the layer again to bring up the layer style panel, click on color overlay, and then reduce it till it matches. And I'm looking at the luminosity values. If you're working with something that's got color and it's confusing your eye, one trick that I like to do is I like to create a new black and white adjustment layer, and that just makes everything black and white. So now you're only really looking at the luminance values, and that can help you better determine the level of the atmosphere that particular object is going to have. So then I don't have to worry about colors or anything like that. And this is just to help me see it. I'm going to get rid of that later when I'm done. Get rid of that adjustment layer when I'm done. So I'm going to bring up the layer style window again, and then try to match the luminance values of the castle and the mountain. So something like that. And I'm going to do that one more time. Oh, I'm not actually worrying about the perspective, but I'm kind of eyeballing it. So, I mean, if I really wanted to, I could draw, the vanishing. I mean, I know where the horizon line is, so I can create a vanishing point and just start drawing paths and really keep it into perspective. But I'm not doing that for this, just because we don't have the time. And same for this one, so something like that. And I'm just going to do one more just for fun. Actually, I was thinking of doing 2 more, but it's taking too long, so I'm just going to click and drag. And this one's actually going to be much, much bigger because it's closer to us. And again, I'm eyeballing it here.
Jesus, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What are you using to match the luminous values?
I created a black and white adjustment layer just so I can get rid of all the color. And I can see the luminance of the object that I'm bringing in the background. Then I created a color overlay with the color of the atmosphere. In this case, it was a lighter blue that I chose from this area here. And then I'm using the opacity of the color overlaid to increase or decrease that color in that layer, and that changes the luminance value of that particular object. So in here, you can see that I'm bringing the opacity down, And I'm just trying to match the darks to the darks of the ground that it's sitting on. So maybe something like that, and I'll press OK. And then I can hide or delete the black and white adjustment layer, and you can see the buildings now have the atmospheric perspective of the image that you're working with. Yes. Oh, sorry. It depends on the image. For something like this, probably not, but if there's a lot of color, sometimes your eye gets a little confused. It's just a little trick you can use to make it easier on yourself, but it's not required or necessary. And by the way, you don't have to use a color overlay. You could usually use something like levels or anything that adjusts the image. In this particular image, I thought that color overlay worked great. And I guess the important thing about the things that I'm showing you is not so much, to know where the color overlay is. It's more of getting you to think about atmospheric perspective and the different things that I'm going to talk about, and then using Photoshop to bring those things into the composition. And it may be color overlay, it may be an adjustment layer, it might be something else, but just keep those things in mind. Any other questions before we move on? Questions? All right, we're moving on. Oh, any questions online, Sally?
No, nothing right now.
All right. So thank you. This one's actually very simple and very easy to understand. I don't even have a mini project for that. When you bring an image in, you got to think about the light source of the background layer. So if I were compositing this ball onto this composition, right away you know that there's something wrong. The light source coming from the right, but the shadow is also on the right of the object. So you got to keep that in mind. So,
Jesus, may I ask a question?
yes, you may.
What would I do if you said no? To add a sense of depth, can't you scale the buildings down as they go towards the horizon?
You can, but you're not thinking of the atmosphere. I don't know if that person saw earlier when I scaled the building really, really small. It was so dark and sharp that it looked out of place. So you have to think of the atmosphere as well, not just the scale.
Okay, great, thanks.
For something like this, it's very simple. You just got to keep in mind where the light is and make sure that the lighting is always facing, that the light is always facing your object. So yeah, it's very, very simple. Just keep that in mind. And a lot of people forget it's not easy. I mean, this is very simple here. We have a big, huge light bulb and a ball, but a lot of times there's people, there's building, there's a lot of things, and your eye could get tired and you might not notice it. So try to keep it in mind. I'm sorry? Ooh, we're gonna talk about that too. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't really hear you.
Just 1 second, please, everyone. Who asked the question? Okay. And hold on 1 second. I got to get back there first. I'm in heels. Hold on.
While you reoriented the object to move the shadow on the opposite side, wouldn't you also incorporate some of the wavelength of the light source into the object it's shining on?
Yeah. Okay, and I'm sorry, what was your question?
In other words, the light source had a particular color spectrum, and that wasn't reflected in the object.
That's right. I actually have a section on that as well.
Great, okay.
Yeah. So if I don't answer your question, just ask it again, please. But yeah, I think I got that covered.
Anyone else have questions before we move on? Anyone? Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to move into shadows, and I think somebody online had a question about shadows, so if I don't answer it during this little presentation here, then you feel free to ask again. So when you're working with shadows, and by the way, I'm going to be showing some pretty complicated things, and you don't have to worry about that. You're going to see some crazy lines and a whole bunch of stuff about how shadows work, and you don't have to remember the names of anything. I'm just showing them to you just so you know that there's a rhyme and a reason for everything. So here we have a picture of an egg, and I'm going to press Command-H, Control-H on the PC to hide the guides. And I'm just pointing out the different parts of a shadow. This is a cast shadow here. We have the occlusion shadow, which could be the contact shadow, which is the shadow that's closest to the surface when you have something on it. Then we have the umbra, which is a darker part of the shadow right above that. And then the penumbra, which is an even lighter, blurrier section of a shadow. Now, all you really have to remember is that there's a really, really dark shadow close to the object. There's a lighter yet dark shadow after that, and then just a blurrier, lighter shadow. Now, if you're curious and you want to know how you get to these shadows, well, there's actual mathematical equations to figure that out. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to know, you have your light source, you have your object. You draw parallel vertical lines from your light source to the edge of your object. And here's that darker shadow I was talking about. And then you can draw a line from the edge of your light source to the opposite edge of your object. And here's that, the penumbra, which is the lighter, blurrier shadow that I was talking about. And as you can see, if you move the ball up or down, the shadow changes. And the same thing if we have a small point light or a bigger light, you can see how it affects the shadow. So a lot of your photographers, so if we have a point light pointing right at the person, the shadow in the background is going to be a hard shadow, and this is represented here, just a little tiny penumbra. So you really don't see the outside of the shadow too much. You just see that hard edge. So you have to think about the light sources that are in your image and how your object, or how the shadow is going to be affected by the light source in the image. So again, just illustrating the same thing, just in a different way. We have the area light here, we have the object, and you can see these yellow lines create the umbra. The crossing lines here represent the penumbra. What I was just talking about, the point light, just creates that hard edge shadow. So we have the soccer ball here, and we want to incorporate it into this image. And I know the color's not right, and we'll talk about that later, but maybe I'll do something on this one now since you asked the question earlier. There's two ways I like creating shadows. The first one, and we're going to use the Wacom tablet, is by creating a, oh man, I can't even see it. Oh my God, these things are so small, I'm sorry. An exposure adjustment layer. And I'm just going to press Command-I to turn that black. And by the way, actually, I can just hold Option or Alt on the PC as I create it. So it's, oops, I wasn't holding it, sorry. Anyway, if you hold Option or Alt, it makes it black when you create the adjustment layer. But anyway, so now I have this exposure adjustment layer. And with white, I'm just going to paint somewhere in the image. It doesn't really matter where I paint. Wacom tablet not working. All right. I'm not sure if it's anything to do with the connect. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I pressed the wrong key there. Sorry, guys. There we go. It should be working now. There we go. Okay, so now I painted white, and you really can't see it because I haven't made any adjustments. But if I click on this little icon here, it's going to bring up the properties panel, and I can adjust the exposure. So I can bring this in. And by the way, when you're creating shadows, you look at the image for clues of how the shadow should look and where it should be facing. And here we can barely see it, but if you look back here, we can see the goal. The goal is back here, and this is the shadow of the crossbar, right about here. So we know what color the shadow should be, and we know more or less what angle it should be in. So using the exposure, I can more or less match that particular color. And I know I'm a little bit off. I don't know how it looks on there, but it's close enough. So I'm just going to use this exposure here. Then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to fill this with black, so it gets rid of it. Then with my little Wacom tablet here, I can paint my shadow back in. And oops, sorry about that. Let me just fill that with black again. I have a hard edge brush. I can choose the stuff brush, and then maybe bring the flow and the opacity down so I can build on the shadow. And by the way, I want to put this adjustment layer right below the soccer ball, and I haven't done it yet. There we go, right below the soccer ball. So now when I paint, you know what? I left it at 1%. Yep, thank you. There we go. See, now I create my contact shadow there, occlusion shadow, and then I can start creating the rest of the shadow. And you know what? I wasn't really paying attention to the perspective of the goal there. So if I would have done a better job, I would have created the shadow up a little bit higher. But you get the idea. And one thing that you may want to do is a lot of times shadows are not they're not hard edge. So you may want to use filters or anything you can to help match the ground that they're sitting in. In this case, we have grass. So one thing we can do is use the ripple filter to create some ripples, and that's too much, as you can see there in the preview, just to help it sort of blend better with the, that's probably a little too much, but maybe if I use the fade filter, you know, I can sort of get something that matches the blades on the ground. So just keep in mind shadows, direction of the shadows, and how they're affecting the ground or area that they're laying on. Another way you can create a shadow, and probably this is probably the way I would do it if I had a simple object like a soccer ball. Just create a drop shadow, and I could match the color of the shadow of the goal there, and maybe something like that. But obviously that, you know, that doesn't look realistic. So what you can do is you can right click on the little FX icon or hold Control if you're on a Mac and don't have a mouse, and click on Create Layer, and that's going to create a layer from that drop shadow. So then you can transform that drop shadow whichever way you want. So I can bring it here, maybe do a distort on it. And obviously that's too rough, so maybe I need to blur that a little bit. And again, if you look at that, you can kind of see how sharp the shadow is. So maybe something like that. Command J to duplicate it, Command T to transform, and I can scale that in to create the contact shadow there at the bottom. So any questions before we move on? Oh, you okay?
You didn't get that, did you? When I just tripped? Okay. Any questions? I got up for nothing is what you're saying. Okay. Continue. We're good.
All right. We're moving on. This one, again, is one of those simple ones. Do I have a mini project? Yeah, I have a mini project for it, but it goes back to the question somebody asked earlier. This mostly relates with when you're working with what you have, so you can't go back and shoot the images if you wanted to. So we have, maybe you wanted to composite these two balls side by side, and one of the problems that you're going to come across is that a lot of times the sharpness of the images that you're working with are not the same, so you have to match it. So obviously you would blur, you can't make something sharper a lot of the time. It's actually really hard. So you would it'll be easier to just blur something and match the blur of the other object just so they fit and they look like they belong together. Obviously, obviously that only, mostly I should say, it mostly relates when the objects should be side by side, but one is obviously much sharper than the other. Obviously, if you have, you know, something way back here, then yeah, of course it can be blurry. But if you have two things that should be sitting side by side and one is so much blurry than the other one, you're going to have to blur the one that's sharper just so it fits. Because I mean, I even see movie posters where it's obvious that whoever did the composition wasn't thinking about these things, and it just draws your eyes right to it. At least it does with my eyes. I have a little mini project here, and it's, you know, I have this dog, and if you zoom in, and actually that's my friend's dog, Kelev. She's very, very sweet. And if you see, even in the areas that are close to us, it's really, really blurry, and she doesn't look right. She almost looks like she's floating. So you would have to, you know, blur her, match the blur, or, you know, get it close to it so the image looks somewhat realistic, or, you know, it looks like it belongs, and it doesn't look like a composition. So, or like a collage, I should say. Any questions? I think that was pretty. Oh, yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay. What is your favorite stock photo site? Do you have any particular ones that you'd like to share?
iStock photos.
iStock photo.
Yeah.
Okay. Multiple light sources. Someone asked a question a few minutes ago about dealing with multiple light sources, and also the best way to blur. So if you want to address any of those.
Multiple light sources. It sort of relates back to the image that I had, or the illustration I had earlier with the lines showing where the light was going to be. So, I mean, if you've seen like a professional sports, a lot of times you see the players running and there's like different shadows coming out of them. You have to think about the light sources in that relation, like where the lights are coming and where the shadows are going to hit the background, but I mean, it's really hard to just show it in Photoshop without having the right images. But you know, just think about where they would be in the real world. And a lot of times you can just go take a picture of something. Maybe maybe you have this stylus here and just take a picture of it, and you see how the different lights are hitting the surface that it's laying on. And then you can use that as reference for your compositions. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Let's see,
blur.
we talked about, yeah, best way to blur. Do you have a particular
Best
blur
way to
filter you use?
blur what to what? Should be
Yeah, I guess, can you give it, do you have any thoughts on when you use any of the, it just depends on the
it just depends on what
situation.
you're doing. I mean, it's
Okay.
just, yeah.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Sort of similar to what we were just talking about, and I actually don't have a little mini project for this, but I might actually, I don't recall. But anyway, so again, you're not the photographer, you didn't take the pictures, or you can't go back and reshoot those photos. And if you have a photo with noise and the item that you're compositing in does not having any noise, you're going to have to add that noise just so it looks like it belongs together. So you can add noise several ways. If the noise has color, one of the things I like to do, and let me make sure I'm on the right layer, I am, is go to filter, filter gallery, and it's actually under texture, grain, and you can play around with the noise to match your object. Obviously, I wasn't paying attention to the background, so the noise is not the same, but if you take time and you move those sliders around accordingly, you should be able to match the noise of the two images that you have or that you're trying to composite in. Any questions before we move on? Oh, what does it look like bigger? Yeah. And again, I wasn't really paying attention on the actual noise. I just wanted
Did
to.
you just ask a question?
He did.
Yeah, I have a microphone for the questions.
Thank you for repeating the question.
You're welcome. Yeah, and like I said, obviously this is not looking right because I wasn't comparing the two images when I was adding the noise. I just sort of slid it over and added some noise to it. But like I said, if you're working on a project, just keep that in mind. Keep in mind source and the item that you're bringing in.
Okay, there is a question online. May I hit you with it?
Yes, you may.
When making a shadow, any pros or cons for using a gradient for that penumbra, etc.?
No problems at all. Like I said earlier, don't look at so much as to what I do. Mostly of don't look at the techniques that I use in Photoshop. Like if you want to use a gradient or use anything else, as long as it works, as long as it looks right. I'm just showing you the problems in one of many different ways that you can solve that problem. So yes, if gradients are a way that works for them, then yeah. Sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of techniques. I'm a fan of results. So if it works, it works. All right, color cast. I think we had a question about that. Was that your question? Yeah. So yeah, like he was mentioning earlier, the light bulb was yellow. In this case, we don't have a light bulb, but the light source is it's casting a color. We have a cool color and a warm color. There's a million ways you can warm something up or cool it down. If we wanted this to work, obviously we would have to come in here with the ball, and we could, for example, add actually we'll do something fun. I was gonna do a photo filter, but we'll do a color lookup. Color lookups are these, think of them as different settings that you can apply to images. So for example, there's a candlelight one, there's a bleach bypass. But anyway, right now I'm affecting the entire composition, and I don't want to do that. I just want to affect the ball. So the ball's in its own layer, so I can create a clipping mask. You can hold Option Command G to create a clipping mask, or you can hover in between both the adjustment layer and the ball layer. Hold Alt Option on the Mac when you're in between both of them, and you see the icon change. Click on it. And one other way you could do it is with the layer mask, the adjustment layer selected. You can click on this icon here. But anyway, so once you have that applied to the ball, you can add maybe, I think there's there's one in here that's maybe edgy amber. Yeah, edgy amber. So edgy amber makes things look really hot. And then of course you can use the opacity to match the color cast of that particular image. If you are if you've ever seen any of my videos on YouTube, I have a whole video on color correction with curves. And one of the things that we work on that video is in this image here. It's sort of the same problem. Background is warm, foreground is cool, and they don't fit. One of the things you can do is create a curves adjustment layer, and we're going to clip it to the plane. So any changes that we make only affect the plane. Then you can click on the little icon right up here and click on auto options. With the auto options, we can click on find dark and light colors. And this is going to help Photoshop decide what color the darkest color is and what color the lightest color is, and that should help us change the color tone of the plane. So right now the darkest color is black. We don't want it to be black. We want it to be one of these dark reds. By the way, see how I'm clicking around and it turned white? That's because I made a mistake earlier on. Notice that the layer mask is selected right here. So that's why it's white. So I'm going to have to start over again. I got to click on the actual icon here for the curves right here. So now that it's selected, I can go back, click on auto options, click on find dark and light colors, click on the shadows, and I'm just going to do it quickly here. So I'm going to select one of these dark reds and then find a yellow color to match that. And of course, once I'm done, it's going to tell you if you want to save that as your default colors. You probably don't want to do that. You just click on no. And then you can come in here and maybe add more reds, more blues. And by the way, in case you don't know, the way the curves adjustment works is you can work with the composite, which is the RGB, and you can increase and decrease the entire composited luminance values and colors, or you can work on each individual channel, red, green, and blue. If you are working with the red channel, you can click and drag up, which adds red. Click and drag down, which adds cyan. Same thing for green. If you drag up, you get more green. If you drag down, you get more magenta. And with blue, if you drag up, you get blue. And if you drag down, you get yellow. And how do you know that? There's no way you're going to ever remember that, and that's okay. Photoshop can help you out. If you go into Window, Info, look here. You have RGB. On the opposite side, you have CMY. So red, cyan, green, magenta, blue, yellow. So those are the opposites. So if you ever forget, that's where you can go and remind yourself which way to drag which one. So, I'm sorry? Oh, right. They're just similar. Yes. So anyway, obviously I didn't do that good of a job here because I should have spent more time choosing the right yellow, but you guys get the idea. And like I said, I have I think a 30-minute video just on this topic with this image on my YouTube channel if you're interested. Of course, there's other ways of matching color. There's hundreds of ways probably, and like I said, don't worry about technique, worry about results, whatever works. You guys have any questions or comments? The plane.
Do it again. Do I have to hit you here?
Actually, this is one of the photographs that I did take.
You did take this?
I did take the plane, not the sky, but the plane was taken in the Alameda Naval Air Station. I live in Alameda.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like an A4 attack.
Yeah.
Should
All right.
I just leave that with you in case you have any other questions in the room before we continue?
Yeah, I might have missed it, but what is your YouTube channel?
It's
Name?
Photoshop Training Channel. You can go to photoshoptrainingchannel.com. Yeah. Okay, so somebody had a question about reflections earlier, and now we're talking about reflections. Sort of with, if you watch a lot of YouTube videos or people talking about reflections, they always tell you, you select the object, you duplicate it, and then you flip it over, and boom, there's your reflection. And that works great if you're working with an object like this. But what if you're working with a car? Like, how are you going to get that reflection? If I were to copy this and flip it over, it's not going to match. And just so I can show you, I'm just going to Command J, Control J on the PC to duplicate, and I'm just going to go to Control T to transform it, and I'm just going to flip it vertically. And why isn't my car showing? Oh, there it is. It was taking a little while. Anyways, if I drag this down, you can see that it's just not going to work because the car is in a little bit of an angle. So just like with perspective earlier, we have to worry about perspective when it comes to the objects that you're reflecting. So how can I reflect this car if I don't have the right angles? Well, like I said before, you have to cheat a little bit, and you have to use Photoshop, and you have to use the tools that are available for you. And one of the things that you can do, actually, it will take a long time if I did it, but I'm just going to show you how I did it. Actually, let me show you the finished product here. Here we go. You can sort of see it there, the reflection on the car. And how I got to that point was by first, I used lines to help me figure out, because I wanted to keep things in perspective, obviously. So I wanted to keep the center of the tire aligned, the back of the tire aligned, the back of the car, and actually, I don't know what happened to it, but I had more lines here showing me the side of the car, the Toyota logo, and all that stuff. But anyway, so the way that I got the objects to match was by using different pieces and then distorting them to match the perspective. And now, if I were to bring the opacity to 100%, you'll see that the car doesn't. You can actually see the edges, but if you bring down the opacity and it's a little bit blurry, and then you add a grading at the end to fade it, there's no way people will ever see those little tiny misalignments. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that you sort of have to cut the item into pieces and arrange it and make the perspective match. If you notice, if I were to draw the lines, we'll have a vanishing point somewhere back here on the left-hand side, and the reflection will also have the same perspective. So it makes it more look a little more realistic. Oh, and by the way, you can sort of tell right here, I found a stock photo of a bottom of a car, and I put that in there as well. So it would fit. Any questions? Okay. Sally, how are we with time? Good. Oh, awesome. Okay, so I was actually yes.
I think we need to limit the questions from 1 to 10.
You created a duplicate image.
Yes.
Can you create it at an angle? In other words, the vanishing point or the angle that the car is on the pavement there.
Yes.
So you flipped it this way. Can you flip it this way at an angle?
Let me open it up again. I'm not sure I understand. Maybe if you show me and I see what you're talking about. You bring the car back up. Okay, so I have the car.
The angle?
Yes, I see the angle. It's coming from here.
Can you flip it that way, that angle?
Can I?
Can you flip it around that angle?
So.
Or is it not?
So like flip it horizontally, you mean, or?
No. See the angle of the wheels.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So rotate it.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, right. And well, see, the thing is that it still wouldn't match because now, watch, I'll show you. So so you're talking about rotating it this way and then flipping it vertically, right? You see that? See how the wheel is just way down there?
So it doesn't work.
It doesn't work, yeah. It works for simple objects like maybe you have a box, a circle.
Thank you. I was going to try it at home, but now I don't have to.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I was worried. What if it worked? I was hoping it didn't. I'm just playing. So you guys remember this? We were talking about this earlier, and I was actually informed not too long ago that Ed was going to be here showing us some Wacom tablets. So I wanted to do something with the tablet since I originally hadn't planned for it on the presentation. And one of the things that I was going to talk about, and just because of lack of time, was how to change the mood or the color tones of an image to make something to make it look like it's snowing. And one of the things that I'm going to use the Wacom tablet for is to show you how you can create snow realistically and very, very easy. And also how to create fog. So that's the fog layer there. And
I'm going to take a stab and say our friends who are watching on the East Coast don't care about making snow, but just thought I'd throw that out there. I'm just teasing you.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to create snow. And to do that, I'm going to create a custom brush, and custom brushes are really, really easy to create. And if you have a Wacom tablet, I mean, you're in heaven. You can do so many things with them. So I'm just going to create a new document. I'm going to go to File, New. My document is going to be just 200 by 200 pixels. Press OK. When you create a brush, you can think as white as transparent and black as the actual paint that's going to, or the actual brush that you're creating. So sort of the opposite of a layer mask. So I'm just going to click on my brush here, and I'm just going to come here and just create a dot. And actually, I'm going to bring the opacity back up because it's too low. And create a dot here, and it doesn't have to be a perfect circle because there's snowflakes and they're not perfect circles. And I'm just going to create a bigger one. Looks a little bit different. Maybe something like that. And that's going to be my brush. Then I'm going to go into Edit, Define Brush Preset, and I can call it whatever I want. So it's going to be snow, so we'll just call it snow. Press OK. Then I'm going to create a new layer. Make sure that I'm painting with white. And oh, there's my snow. Well, that didn't work. So what we have to do is we have to play a little bit with the brush panel here. And one of the things we can do is we can increase the spacing, and notice a preview here. This is showing you what the result of the paintbrush is going to be. I can add some shape dynamics and maybe increase the size jitter. So this will make different sizes of the brush as you're stroking. I can change the diameter, and I'm going to scatter it, and I'm going to scatter it a lot. Now, when I come in paint, oops, sorry. When I come in paint, you have something that looks like snow. Now, of course, I can adjust the size of the brush. And oops. Let me create a layer. There we go. And just paint my snow whichever way I want. Then I can blur it. And then maybe add a motion blur so you can see the snow coming down a little bit. So blur, motion blur, select the right angle. That's obviously too much. And come back down. Now, this is the first step. I would actually do this 3 more times just so we can have different levels of snow. And what that ends up looking like is what I showed you earlier, which is this. I actually merged it down into one layer. I should have not done that. But in reality, there's 4 different levels of snow. If I zoom in really close, you can see the tiny little ones back here, and then the bigger ones here. So that's one way you can create snow by creating a new brush. Any questions or comments before we move on? Yes. Oh, Mike.
Wow, thank you so much for waiting for me to get there with the microphone. Here you are.
I still have a ticket here. So how are you're switching back and forth in some way here? That is to say, we're looking at this presentation in the video, but you're moving over to the Wacom tablet to implement some of these things as you're going.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you're over here interacting with the tools and controls.
Yes.
And sometimes you're
using the tablet.
Using the tablet.
Okay.
Sometimes it'd be helpful if we knew which one was happening at which time.
Oh, okay. I'll try to mention it, but just keep in mind that, I mean, in reality, it doesn't really matter if you're using the mouse or the mouse track. The tools are in the same spot. I mean, really, the biggest real difference is the control you have with your hands and the sensitivity and the pressure and all of that. But in terms of where things are and how they are, it's exactly the same. But I'll try to keep it in mind and say I'm using the tablet now, so you guys know exactly what I'm using. But yeah, no problem. Any other questions? All right.
I just want to say that you have a lot of fans online, and a lot of people are saying that they regularly watch your channel, and and they love you. So you're doing a great job. Keep going.
Thank you. I don't know how we are with time, but I have one thing that I didn't know if we were going to have time for or not, and I just wanted to. I've been doing a bunch of little mini projects just to sort of show the different points that I wanted to show you guys. So I didn't really have one big one. So I was thinking, well, what can I do? And I decided to come up with this composition, and it's very simple. It's not, you know, super awesome, but there's certain things in it that I like to show you, so you can incorporate. Yes, Mike. They're answering questions online. I could. Oh, the fog. Yes, thank you. Oh, see, somebody's paying attention. They get a T-shirt, by the way. Yeah. Can we get them a T-shirt, please? Thank you. The fog. I'll go back to that file. Okay, so for the many people who are online who watch my YouTube channel, they should remember this because I use it quite often. One way of creating fog or clouds or any sort of steam from scratch that I like to do is go into filter. Oh, and by the way, I'll show you a cool little trick. If you go into filter, blur, or I'm sorry, filter, render clouds, it creates clouds. We all know that. And let me make sure this is black and white. But something that you may not know is that if you go into filter, blur, and clouds while holding option, oops, I did that again. Why am I going into blur? I'm saying the right words, but still not going into clouds. So render clouds, holding option, and click on clouds, you get clouds with higher contrast. So I was holding Alt when I clicked on that. And just to show you the difference, I'm going to go back into filter, render, clouds, but this time I'm not holding Alt. And you can see the difference. So if you want clouds with more contrast, remember to hold that Alt key, and then you'll get clouds with more contrast. For this, I don't really need the clouds with contrast. I just wanted to show you. But anyway, so now we have our layer of clouds. What I'm going to do now is add a layer mask. Then I'm going to go into filter and clouds again. I could have just pressed Command F, and it's going to create what you see there. Then I'm going to change the blending mode to screen. I'm going to create a new group. I'm going to put that layer onto that new group. I'm going to hold Alt or Option on the Mac while I'm creating the layer mask, and it's going to turn it black. It's going to make it disappear. Now I have the pen. And if I'm painting with white, and actually let me choose a soft brush. If I'm painting with white with a soft brush and just sort of tap in there, you can see how I'm bringing that fog into the image like so. And it's looking gray because it's not being affected by the adjustment layer. So I'm just going to drag that down maybe here, and now it's the same color as the composition there. Yeah. Yes. No.
Do you ever create actions for some of these things?
Not really. I find it that a lot of the things that, at least personally, the things that I work with, a lot of times require something that an action wouldn't be able to give me. It just requires a lot of customization. So no, there's a few things I have actions for, but not many. Like, yeah, like I don't really have too many. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, microphone.
If you wanted to composite, that's good, composite a different sky, I have a number of lighthouses and blah sky. So I'd like to put a sky that really would feature the subject. How do you composite a new sky?
Perspective matters. Maybe not so much so as buildings and stuff like that. You know what? I'm actually regretting something. I actually had a sky composition worked out for today, and I decided not to bring it in. If you email me, I could talk to you via email, and I can show you what I had, and I'll even send you the explanation that I wrote down for it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So jr@photoshoptrainingchannel.com.
Can that actually be sent to the whole meetup?
Sure. I will send it. I got to remember to do it. If somebody emails me, just one person email me and I'll do it. Okay. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to post a link from this on my website, and I'll just have all these files available for download for those who want to use it. So I'll send you the link, and then people could just download the whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
Just a question online. Maybe you can repeat the question. Have you ever done compositing for video? Could you just
for video? That's an interesting question. Before I started, while I was learning Photoshop, I also wanted to do compositing for video. So yes, I've done that, and that was my first career goal before I became a designer. So yes, I have. And actually, that reminds me of something. In video, well, when I was working with video, it helped me realize a lot of this perspective issues, because when you have a camera and you're filming somebody, it makes it really obvious when you have moving images when things are not in perspective. So one of the advantages I had with working with video and compositing video was that I had to make sure the perspective was right, or nothing else was going to work, not the color, lighting, or any of that. Any other questions, Sally?
Not right now. We're good.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Mike?
What if I was going for more of a fall look and I wanted to create leaves instead?
Okay. There are leaves in a. Why don't we try it? I mean, here you put me on the spot, so why don't I try it? We'll see how good I really am. Let me just get rid of all these adjustment layers here. There's already leaves built in Photoshop, a brush preset. If you don't like it, you can create your own preset. But if you go under here, we have some leaves. Let me find them. There we are. So we have leaves here, and then all I have to do is choose the right color. So maybe, I don't know if I'm going to get them right on this first try here, but we'll see what happens. So here's my leaves, and this is just a brush that comes with Photoshop, and then you can just paint your leaves. Obviously, that's maybe not what you had in mind. So you can come in here and again play around with the brush settings. So maybe, I mean, just from what I did there, I can tell that I probably need more scattering, so I'll probably scatter more of those. I probably don't need that many, so I'll bring the count down. Shape dynamic seems okay. Let me see what that looks like. So I can come in here and actually let me create a new layer. And maybe they're too small, so maybe make bigger ones. I don't know, something like that. But I mean, you get the idea. You can play around with the different settings. And if you wanted to create, here, why don't we create one really quick? If you wanted to create a different kind of leaf, I'll do the same thing, 200 by 200. And we'll see how good my drawing skills are. I'm just going to select a hard brush, and I'm just going to draw a leaf. And of course, you could, trace it or create it with the pen tool or whatever. But I mean, this will be our leaf for now. You don't have too much time. So that's our leaf. And then I can create a brush preset. But you know what? I should have done it in black. So I'll just fill that with black. Oops. Command D to deselect. And go to Edit, Define, Brush Preset. Call it leaf. Come back into composition and find my leaf. Should be here at the bottom. There it is. So there's my leaf. So then I can come back and do what I did earlier. I can click on shape dynamics, different sizes, scatter them. Maybe change the diameter, change the angle so they're all facing different ways, so it's not just the same leaf pointing the same direction, they're falling all over the place. And maybe scatter them and then find a color that looks like fall leaves. We'll just steal this color here, that looks good. And I can come and I can paint with it. So, I mean, that's just one way that you can create a brush if you're not happy with the one that is there with Photoshop. Then the second part to your question is just for that specific question, I would probably use the color lookup adjustment layer that I showed you earlier, which was I already forget, it was at Edgy Amber. Yeah, it was Edgy Amber, so you could mess around with the opacity and blending modes of different things. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
Just to really quickly follow up on that, could you potentially use an image as a brush?
You could, yes, but it's going to be, you're just going to have a luminance value, so you can have like a green leaf. You would have to select that color, but yes, you can use the luminosity of that leaf, yes. Anything else? Yes.
How would you deal with putting the shadows onto the leaves? Is there an easy way to do that?
There is no easy way, but I mean, to get started, a lot of the times when I'm working, let's say that this was my composition and I did want to put shadows in there, the way I experiment, and the way that I would start experimenting with this specific image on putting the shadows on her is something that I already showed you today. I would start out by creating a drop shadow, dragging that back, finding the right color, whatever color that may be, maybe one of these colors, maybe that's the color of my shadow, find the right opacity, and just create a new layer out of that, like I did earlier. So if I right click on it or hold Control on the Mac and then click, I can select, I can click on create layer. It creates a layer out of that, and then I can use the maybe use like a clipping mask or something, and then use the different distort tools, maybe like warp, and try to warp the. Oops, I didn't have the shadow layer selected. And maybe use like warp or something like that to warp the shadows onto her, and then maybe I probably would use the blend if blending options here at the bottom. So essentially, this uses the luminance values of the image below to hide certain things. So if I click and drag this to the right, you'll see how the leaves disappear in areas that are dark, but they're still showing in areas that are light, like up here. If I do that on the other side, the leaves will disappear in areas that are light, but show in areas that are dark. If you hold Option, it split those into half, and you can drag one half away, so it's a smoother transition, sort of like a gradient, or like just a smoother transition. But anyway, so that's how we'll go about that, and then figure out what works. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Although I've used 3D and After Effects, do you see any use of the 3D capability of Photoshop in making composites like this?
For texturing, it works really well for texturing. I don't think it works well for modeling something. If you build something in, like, I don't know, 3ds Max or and whatever, and bring it into Photoshop and texturing it there, then yeah. And then you're actually, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna show something with 3D. It's not too scary. It's actually very simple and with perspective. So since you reminded me, why don't I show that? I'm gonna go back into the first image that we were working with. And in Photoshop, you can create 3D objects from scratch. And this is how I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to create a new layer. Actually, I just need to go into 3D, new mesh from layer, mesh preset, and I'm going to create a cube. The cube is going to be very similar to the cubes that are on here, but this is going to be a 3D cube that we can rotate into different directions. For example, my cube selected, and I can click and just rotate it. See, it's a 3D cube. But notice one thing. Notice that when I click, by the way, this little square here at the bottom, I'm controlling the camera. I'm not really rotating the cube, I'm rotating the camera. And the first thing I want to do is match the perspective. But how am I going to match the perspective of a 3D object in Photoshop? Well, if you look at Photoshop, it's giving us clues. Look at this line right up here. What do you guys think that line is right up here? Horizon line, exactly. So now all I have to do is use these tools to match the horizon line, and once I do, I can manipulate my 3D object based on the perspective of the image that I'm working with. So then, I could come in here and maybe scale this thing up or down and move it around in 3D space. And as you can see, it's still in perspective. I mean, I'm a little bit off, but I was just showing you how to do that. If you really wanted to get exact, you can come and move around these by hand, and then you can really nudge it down. But that's close enough for this demo. So to answer, I'll come back to it in a moment. So that's how you would use Photoshop to composite 3D objects. You bring it into Photoshop, you may add some textures, and then use these tools to align it to the photograph that you're working with. Okay, cool. Yes.
I noticed on the buildings, the windows look very one-dimensional, and they don't have any reflection in them. Is there a way to pull out some of that reflection?
So you're talking.
There is some light shining right
on. You're talking on these buildings. To answer your question, yes, there are some ways, but again, it all depends. Like how would I go about that for this particular image? I don't even remember exactly what the original image looked like. It looked something like that. So actually, the background is not composited in. That's exactly how it looked when the photograph was taken. So that's how it originally looked. But I could add some reflections or highlights or anything like that if I wanted to. The question is how. You just have to make, unfortunately, very complicated selections if you just want to affect the windows. If you want to, add like a whole, light onto the building, it's a lot easier. But if you want to do each individual window, then the easiest way would probably be to create a whole bunch of masks using the pen tool, because you have straight edge lines and you can just target those particular windows. But I mean, that's how I would go about that. Or that, yes. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir. Oh, where's my mic? Oh, there he is.
So you were setting the horizon line for your 3D cube among the other cubes in that. Can you also set your vanishing point in perspective?
You can, but the real, where did it go? Did I close it? Oh no, here it is. You can, but it's really not, the vanishing point is really, I mean, maybe if I wanted to match one of these boxes exactly, there's no real way of matching that specific vanishing point. But don't worry too much about the individual vanishing points, because you can have several. Just worry about the horizon line, because all vanishing points lead to that horizon line. So that's the only thing you need to worry about when putting images together. In terms of matching a specific vanishing point, other than clicking and dragging this till you get it right, there's no real way of doing it. Okay, any questions online, Sally? No, we're good. Awesome. All right, so let me go back to this little turtle here. I was trying to think of something that looked kind of interesting and then show you just a few different techniques about how you could use images and different tools to bring something together. And this is what I came up with. And I'll quickly show you how that works. I'm just going to open up some or place some files in there. So I'm going to File, Place, and embed the file into my placement. And I think they're in here. Yeah, so I have this background image here. Just going to place it. And by the way, when you place an image, by default, Photoshop creates a smart object. You may not want that. So if you want to change that, press Command K, that's Control K on the PC, and click on this little box here that says always create smart objects when placing. That way, next time you place, you don't create a smart object. So, so let me just click on Place Embed. And this underwater picture here, so place. And you can see the icon here in the corner. This one's a smart object, this one is not. I don't want this one to be a smart object, so I'm just gonna rasterize the layer so it no longer is a smart object. So now, I mean, I'm kind of cheating because I already have this, the previous image that I worked with before, so I had already decided where I wanted to have the horizon line for this image, but it's okay, we can all live with that. So I can sort of match my background onto that horizon line. I'm using the marquee tool here to make a selection. I'm going to press Command J to duplicate. So now I have water here, and select that, Command J, and now I have the sky. Oops, that didn't work. Sorry, I had the wrong layer selected. me try that again. Command J, and there we go. So now we have the sky and we have the water. So with the water selected, I can transform it, and maybe I can scale it up like so. Now I have my little turtle there, and he's in a good spot. I'll leave him there. I'm going to press Command J. I'm going to duplicate the water, drag it all the way to the top, and I'm going to create a layer mask. I'm going to hold Option, click on it. It creates a layer mask that hides everything in that layer. Now I can paint in with white using a soft brush. Let me find one. I can paint in some of that. Well, actually, it's got to be a hard edge brush. Sorry about that. So I can sort of come in here, and maybe that's too harsh, but that's okay. We'll leave it there. We can sort of paint water in there that's covering the turtle. So now he's submerged. We can turn this layer on and put it in position, maybe here. Maybe drag it all the way to the bottom here. And now he's underwater. And I'm going to Command J to duplicate that, and I'm going to drag, actually, you know what? We just delete that, and I'm just going to make a selection because I don't need the whole layer. So I'm just going to select it here, press Command J, duplicates that section. I'm going to move this layer up on top of the turtle layer, and I can just bring the opacity down just to sort of match the underwater look that he has. And thank you. And one other thing that you want to do is the water is very straight, so maybe I want to distort it a little bit. And if you want to distort it, you can use something like the liquify filter. Oops, sorry, wrong layer. It was this layer here. And you can, just create some little waves so it's not so straight. Press OK, and see, it's no longer straight now. It's got a nice little wave. And I'm going to disable the turtle here. And I didn't do a good job of making my water there, so I got to paint with white a little more here. That's good. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make a selection that's going to include both the top and bottom, and I'm going to do an edit, copy merge. I'm going to paste it. So now we have this layer that looks identical to what's below it. But with this layer, I'm going to go into Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to blur it a little bit. So the part of the water that's hitting the camera, it's a little bit blurry. So it gives it a little more dimension there. And if we turn on our turtle there, oops, he's not working. Oh no. All right, so we can add a layer mask to fix that. You can just come in here and paint with black with a soft brush, of course, and make them work. And I deleted some of the, or hid some of the pixels there, so I'm just going to bring them back, the ones here at the very edge. So there you go. One other thing that I'm going to do is with the turtle, it looks like he's walking, and I'd rather make him seem like he's swimming. So I'm going to go into Filter, Liquify, and on his foot here, on his hind foot here, I'm just going to click on this icon here, and it's going to help me rotate it. If I place it right in the center, it's going to move his foot back. And then I can move that out here, and then maybe this one too. If I hold Option or Alt, it's going to rotate the opposite way. So then this one's going to rotate forward. Maybe drag that out a little bit. Obviously, I'm going really fast here for this demo. I mean, I would take more time if I were doing it for real. So now he's swimming, and we're going to use that snow brush that we created earlier to create particles in the water just coming up. So let me see if I can find that brush here. Here it is. Let me create a new layer. And if I paint, it no longer has the settings we applied to it earlier because we did not save it. So remember to save your brushes if you want to keep them. So I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to try to go super fast here. I'm going to change the size jitter, minimum diameter, a whole bunch of scattering, and a whole bunch of spacing. and I'm just going to create really, really tiny dark blue particles on the water. Actually, those are not so tiny, but that's okay. We can have some big ones that are closer to us. And then maybe some really tiny ones there. And then, of course, we can blur those because they're really, really sharp. Like so. And, obviously, with a little more time, you can get this right. Now, if I wanted to, I could create, why not? Let's do it. I'm going to add just like, I imagine that there's sun right here shining down on him in the turtle. And what I'm going to do just to create that really quickly is I'm just going to paint with white, just a big white dot there, and maybe bring the opacity down accordingly. And to finish it off, I'm just going to go into the color lookup. You guys can tell I really like the color lookups, and they have one that I think will work good for this one, which is it the strip look? Yeah, the strip look. You see the before and after there. It just brings the colors in. It makes it look a little dreamlike, I think. But yeah, that's it. Any questions, comments? Yeah, thank you.
So 2 questions online.
Yes.
If you could repeat them for me since I don't have a mic. One of them is, do you have any thoughts on, do you use type for perspective at all?
Do I use type for perspective? Actually, when I work with type, I really like to use the 3D feature because I can control the perspective.
Okay, so maybe you can come back and show us that another time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I do have a quick little type trick if you want to see it. So I'm just going to type the word type, and actually maybe not in. Actually, here, why don't we do this right? Just going to do a solid color, like that. And I'm just going to make this bigger. I'm going to make this white. And let me see if I can get it to work the first time. Okay, so I created the type layer, and you don't have to worry about anything below this layer because that's part of the old composition. So I have a type layer, and right below that I have a blank layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Command, that's Control on the PC, and click on the type icon, and it loads the active pixels of that selection of that layer. In this case is the word type. Then in the layer below that, I can fill with black, and if I hold Option and delete, oops, not working. That's what I was afraid of. I didn't think about doing this today, so I didn't have it in. I have it in my head. I just can't remember how to do it exactly. Give me 1 second, and I'll figure it out and show you. Here we go. If you hold Command and Option, and then the down arrow and the down arrow at the same time, you can create the long shadow effect. It's really, really popular in graphic design these days. So that creates that. Command D to deselect, and then you can come in. This is a layer on its own. So you can come in there and select color overlay. I'm going to select the red, but I want a darker red, so I'm just going to bring this down here. So then that's perspective with type. Yeah.
A slightly unrelated question.
Okay.
If you could just repeat it. Someone just asked, do you ever use puppet work to move body parts?
All the time, yeah. Yes.
Could you just say it into the mic?
Oh, somebody asked if I use Puppet Warp when moving things around, and the answer is yes, I do. Just to quickly show what that is I guess we can do it with the turtle that we were working with. Let me just find that layer. Here he is, Puppet Warp. Edit, Puppet Warp. It creates this mesh around the image that you're working with, and you can create these pins wherever you click. I don't know if you can, if that's very noticeable up there, but if I click on one of these pins that I placed, I can move the object around. So maybe I want to move his head like outside the water here. There he is. See? And then the little boy's maybe falling back because, it's too much. So yeah, that's Puppet Warp. So yes, I do use that a lot.
That's fantastic. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Okay, and I'm sorry. So someone online, thanks Roger, someone online is asking about, I don't see the problem, but they're saying if the images don't match up, the color doesn't match, how would you make adjustments? I think you discussed that earlier.
Yeah, and actually, yes, I discussed it earlier, but there's one thing I could show to help people. One thing that I like to use a lot is curves. I use them a lot, but I like to use them with different blending modes. For example, if I'm working on the turtle here, and I know this may not look right on this image, but I just want you to get the concepts of how I'm using the tool rather than the effect it's giving on screen. I have a curves adjustment layer that's only going to affect the turtle. If I make any changes, you'll notice that it affects both the colors and the luminosity. But if you change the blending mode to something like luminosity, it only affects the luminance values of the turtle, of the boy and the turtle, but not the color. And I can do that the opposite. I can do the opposite. I can change the blending mode to color and only change the colors, but not the luminance values of the object that is clipped to. So that's how I would go about fixing color tones. Any other questions, comments? Awesome. I mean, I ran out of stuff for today, but if somebody has questions or comments or throw a challenge, yes, sir.
Since you mentioned that early on you worked with video in terms of compositing,
yes.
Clearly After Effects tends to be the tool of choice in that domain. Where do you draw the line between where you would use After Effects in a composite versus Photoshop?
If I'm working with video, I'll use After Effects. I'm using with
just in general. I mean, we were talking about the light sources. That's something I'm much more familiar with than After Effects.
Right.
Because it's a fairly recent Photoshop.
Well, actually, you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that because I used to be a heavy After Effects user maybe 8 years ago. And when I started making the transition into Photoshop, I wanted to use, for example, like fractal noises and things like that in my opinion are better in After Effects. But in terms of when I decide when to use one or the others, today, I mean, I use Photoshop. Like I really don't use After Effects as much anymore, so I'm probably a little behind with my After Effects. So I don't have a good answer for you for that. Oops. Yeah. Micah.
Can you wait for them?
Again, you want me to do the thing again? All right. All right, so we have a background. We have the type. I clicked on Command, that's controlling the PC, and click on the icon here to make a selection out of that. I created a layer below it, a blank layer, nothing in it. I filled it with black. In this case, it's a foreground color, so Option Delete fills with black. Then I held Command Option, that's Alt Control in the PC, and used the down arrows. I went down right, now I'll go down left. So you can see going down left. And so I have the two keys held with my left hand, Command and Option, and then with my right hand, I'm alternating between left and down arrow. And then you can create that, and you go as far as down as you need to the end of the page if you want to. Alt Control, yeah. Yes, sir?
So for like on the business side, personally, what was one piece of advice you would give yourself when you first started for both like YouTube and for just being like an artist in general? What's something that you wish you knew or a piece of advice?
I'll answer the first part first, the YouTube part. I would have just said start sooner. I originally had my idea for the YouTube channel when I was still in school. I was still in college, and that was about 10 years ago. Actually, there was no YouTube back then. I wanted to create a website with written tutorials. I'm not a good writer, so that was what stopped me then. I would have started back then, so that's my advice to myself if I could go back. The second part about being an artist, at least for me, there was a lot of fear and hesitation because I saw so many people were so much better than me that it kind of kept me back from really diving in there and taking on projects that I probably could have done, but I didn't have the confidence in myself. So I probably would have, just dove for it and gone for it more often. I didn't do that till I was much older. So yeah. Yeah, relatively speaking. Any other questions, comments? You're welcome.